Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. The eyes of the world are on President Trump today as he speaks in the United Nations. He'll talk about how every country must come together to take on the growing nuclear threat from North Korea. Wendy.
Even before his speech, Pat, the president was already at work at the UN as he met with several world leaders, including the Prime Minister of Israel. Heather Sells brings us the story.
Many U.S. allies are carefully watching the president's debut speech today, as are America's adversaries. North Korea's top diplomat has a front row seat. Mounting tensions with North Korea are expected to dominate conversations in New York during the six-day UN meeting. The Secretary General calls it the most dangerous crisis that we face today. And President Trump will take it up in his address.
Mr. President, do you have any comments about North Korea? This will be a great week. We look forward to it. As far as North Korea is concerned, I think that most of you know how I feel.
The president is expected to argue that the nation should rally together when faced with common threats like North Korea. It's a marked change from the campaign trail, where he suggested that the UN was not a friend to the U.S. and called it weak and incompetent.
The United Nations is not a friend of democracy. It's not a friend to freedom. It's not a friend even to the United States of America.
The president is also expected to talk about Iran's nuclear agenda and the chaos in Venezuela and Syria. And in keeping with his campaign comments, he will push for reform at the UN, a point he previewed on Monday.
In recent years, the United Nations has not reached its full potential because of bureaucracy and mismanagement.
On one issue, there's no question where the U.S. stands at the UN, taking a strong position in support of Israel. The Prime Minister of Israel reinforced that when he met with President Trump Monday.
I want to say that under your leadership, the alliance between America and Israel has never been stronger, never been deeper.
Trump said they're working very hard to bring peace between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and said he hopes for significant progress by the year's end. He's expected to meet later this week with the Palestinian president, as well as many other world leaders. Another key point for the president at the UN, emphasizing his America First policy, actually working hand in hand with international cooperation. The president believes all nations should put their own interests first, and they can also work together when faced with common concerns, like threats from terrorists and rogue countries like North Korea. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. Our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us from Washington. And David, how do you think the Trump team will get the international community on its side against North Korea?
Well, it's going to be very difficult, Pat. Obviously, there are players out there that will play ball with the Trump administration, but the question is, what will China do? What will Russia do? And even further than that, Pat, will the president call out China specifically by name at the United Nations today? That is an unanswered question. We just don't know. Typically, Trump would call out China. He's done it many times before. But when you are at the United Nations, it's a whole different story, and we'll see what happens. Remember, no applause at the United Nations during these speeches. So that'll be something very different for this president who loves the applause line. There will be none of that today. It'll be dead silent, if you will. And also remember, North Korea will be actually sitting in the front row. As Bob Uecker used to say in that old baseball commercial, they'll be in the front row. And I will say this, that the reason they're in the front row, a lot of people might say, well, that's interesting. It's actually a lottery that determines that North Korea actually gets that seat.
David, you remember it wasn't too long ago that the United Nations voted against Israel. They said the occupation of the West Bank was an act, I don't know if they used aggression or terrorism or what have you, right. But they labeled Israel a terrorist aggressor. And the United States abstained from that, did not use its veto, and that is still in place. So what's the deal on that, do you know?
Well, a couple of things. You know, we talked to U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, about this a few months ago, and she has been very outspoken in the problem that the UN has against Israel. She calls it an anti-Israel bias, and so she's been very outspoken. The question is, will the president actually address that today? There is a sense that he will, or at least maybe not be as strong as Nikki Haley, because Nikki Haley is operating in a different venue and different space at times, but there is a sense that that will happen. I do want to point something real quick, Pat, on North Korea. It's important to note that sanctions indeed are the way that this administration wants to go. They believe that they can get there with sanctions. At the same time, they also understand that those military options, as Eric Rosales was talking about yesterday, definitely on the table for sure.
Well, in the domestic scene, the Congress, you know, Lindsey Graham has come forth with a proposal that may well gather the support needed in his fellow senators to pass to repeal and replace Obamacare with block grants to the states. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, let me tell you something straight up, as they like to say. This is not only a serious effort, Pat, this really could get passed. They're pretty much one vote away. Is it going to be Lisa Murkowski? If they can get Lisa Murkowski to agree, they're probably going to get this bill past the Senate. They're right now probably at 49 votes or so. I have been told by senior administration officials that the president 2 months ago actually told the vice president to get working behind the scenes on a health care replacement deal. And that's what the vice president has done the last 8 weeks. And hence, here we are with the Graham-Cassidy bill. And think about this, Pat, for a moment. It's actually a stroke of genius. The president, and we hear all this about Chuck and Nancy and the 3-month deal with Democrats. Think about what that just did. He took away Harvey and Irma in terms of Senate floor time. He took away anything with the budget for 3 months in terms of Senate floor time. So guess what? That's right. Now there's Senate floor time to debate Graham-Cassidy and get that done before September 30th, because the budget runs out on September 30th. You've got about 10, 11 days left, so they've got to get that done before September 30th. Why do they have to get it done before that time? Because when the budget runs out, so does the budget reconciliation process run out, which means 50 votes are needed before September 30th. After September 30th, it's 60 votes.
You know, with Lisa Murkowski, I don't know how much of a maverick she is, but Alaska is a small state, and it seems like the amount of goodies that could be given to Alaska to get that vote would be pretty small beans, considering some of the other things that are at stake.
Well, you can be sure the horse trading is in full force. Hence one of the reasons I'm not suggesting horse trading is happening today necessarily at the Senate policy luncheon. But Mike Pence, remember, will be in New York this morning for the UN speech by the president, then shuttling back to D.C. for the Senate policy luncheon today. That should tell you something, as we all read between the lines. And then he'll head back to New York. So, yes, Lisa Murkowski is right in the crosshairs of all of this. And let the horse trading begin, Pat.
Well, you also have been speaking with Budget Director Mick Mulvaney on Faith Nation. He thinks tax reform can indeed get passed this year. What's your take on that?
Well, that's right. We're going to speak to the Budget Director, Mick Mulvaney. That is Wednesday on the CBN News Facebook page. Faith Nation, the show, 12:30 Eastern, by the way. Do you like the plug? I had to do that, Pat. Right. Cross-promotion, right? But yes, Mick Mulvaney believes tax reform can get done. And here's the ... to that, Pat. Can it get done this year? You know, all along, the White House has wanted tax reform to get done by Thanksgiving. They believe if it gets done by Thanksgiving, you can have that effect in the economy. So you get the 6 to 9 month effect where the tax cuts get rolling, and then by the midterms, you're in pretty good shape. There's no sense that that is going to get done by Thanksgiving. I think you're looking at after the first of the year. But we'll see. I can tell you this, that the new budget coming up, what Republicans are hoping for, what Mick Mulvaney is hoping for, is to budget in $1.5 trillion of tax cuts into their budget configuration. A lot of math, a lot of smoke and mirrors, but the bottom line is if they can do that, it'll make Republicans hopefully have to take less time dealing with certain tax breaks they're going to have to eliminate to pay for the thing. Well,
now, just procedural, and then we got to move on, but The House is supposed to be the originator of tax bills, budget bills of this nature. This is coming out of the Senate, and they're going to give it to the House, but there's not going to be able to amend it whatsoever. Whatever they have is going to be set in stone. Am I correct in that?
Well, they'll start it in the House for sure, and then it'll go to the Senate, and then of course, the process after that. So, I mean, once again, here's part of the problem, and the White House has been better on tax reform than they were in health care, but once again, how it actually, the process plays out, that is all to be determined. I can tell you this, whatever the process is, it's going to go down, if you will, with 50 votes in the Senate for sure when it gets to the Senate, because they won't have anywhere near 60 to get tax reform passed.
But with the vice president, they'll have that extra vote to take it over the top, right?
That's right. They'll have 50, and he'll be in the chair. And he's been talking about loving that seat in the chair because that's going to be crucial to all of this.
Amen. David Brody, thank you so much. Well,
Thanks,
there's
Pat.
another major story in the news. There's another hurricane. This has moved to a Category 5 with 160 miles an hour. It devastated the island of Dominica last night, and now the people of Puerto Rico are preparing for Maria after Hurricane Irma did up to $1 billion of damage in that bankrupt state or nation or whatever it is. It's a Commonwealth. And here in the United States, Operation Blessing is still on the ground helping people in Texas and Florida recover from Hurricanes Irma and Harvey.
What is going on, Pat? We haven't seen a year like this since 2005.
But I mean, these are monster. This is a Category 5 or devastating earthquake. Well, that thing apparently it's aiming into Puerto Rico. It's full force. You know, the island of Dominica has been devastated. Barbuda, they say there's not a soul alive on that island. I mean, it just wiped it out. I mean, it's just tragedy of massive proportions. And you say, what's going on in this world? I know you asked the question. I am too.
A lot of people say it's the birth pangs. You know, well, it could be.
I mean, it would be birth pangs and also the wrath of God, is revealed against the sins of man. I was reading in Romans just that very thing. The wrath of God is revealed against the children of men of what they've been doing, and they've broken God's covenant. Could this possibly be judgment? I don't know. I mean, I just don't have any revelation to say this is judgment or it isn't, but it's the most awful. I don't think we've ever had anything of this magnitude, one or after the other.
Yeah, I mean, 2005 was close. And of course, we had Katrina. Then right after that, we had Rita, and there was another one. It was called the Year of the Whirlwind. But this, I think 2017's got that one beat. Yeah.
Well, all right. Operation Blessing, by the way, is on the scene. We'll be in Florida. We are in Florida. We're in Texas. And as best we're able, we'll be in Haiti and other countries. So we're trying to help people, and we need help so that we can help them.
That's right.
So it's Hurricane Relief, CVN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463.
Amen.
So keep that in mind.
Great organization to give to right now,
Sure
for sure.
is.